There is a quiet, rhythmic hum beneath the surface of your daily existence, a frequency you rarely acknowledge, but one that dictates the architecture of your life. Before we peel back the layers of this silent engine, subscribe to Invisible Patterns to join a community dedicated to mapping the unseen forces that drive human behavior. Think of a man named Elias. He is a person much like anyone you might know. A man who finds himself standing at the edge of the same familiar cliff time and time again. He does not jump. He does not turn back. He simply paces the perimeter, tracing the same grooves in the dirt that he carved out years ago. Elias watches his life unfold as if it were a film he has already seen. Yet he remains convinced that the ending might change if he just watches a little closer this time. He believes he is making choices, deliberate and conscious, but the evidence of his history suggests a different, more haunting reality. He is not the author of his story. He is a ghost inhabiting a script written by someone else, someone buried deep within the invisible architecture of his own mind. We operate under the grand illusion of agency. We believe that when we reach for that familiar glass of wine after a stressful day, or when we choose to silence the phone rather than confront a looming conversation, we are acting based on the immediate needs of the moment. But consider the possibility that you are not acting for yourself at all. You are acting for a version of yourself that was formed in the shadow of your earliest experiences. When Elias feels the sharp sting of rejection, he does not react to the present. He reacts to the echo of a forgotten afternoon from his childhood, a moment where safety was contingent on silence. His brain, a master of efficiency and preservation, has codified that reaction into a survival mechanism. It does not matter that the threat is gone or that the environment has shifted. The brain hates ambiguity. It prefers the misery of a known pattern over the terrifying infinite of potential change. This is the first layer of the invisible architecture. Your brain is not trying to make you happy or successful, it is trying to keep you consistent. Consistency is the golden cage of human psychology. Elias walks through his house, his movements precise and predictable, and he finds a strange comfort in the repetition. He tells himself he is a person of habit, a man who appreciates stability. But stability is often just a polite term for a lack of movement. When he wakes up, his mind is already scanning for the familiar stimuli that dictate his routine. If he encounters a day that feels different, a day that offers a genuine departure from his script, he feels a spike of anxiety. It is a biological alarm system. The brain perceives deviation as a risk to survival. If the old way worked to keep us alive, no matter how painful it was, the brain classifies it as a successful strategy. To deviate is to step into a void where the outcome is unknown. And for a mind that evolved to fear the rustle in the grass, the unknown is synonymous with death. Elias finds himself trapped in a dynamic where he seeks out partners who mirror the dysfunction he grew up with. He feels a strange, magnetic pull toward the cold, the distant, the unpredictable. He tells himself he is trying to fix them, that if he can only win their affection, he will finally be whole. But this is the great deception. He's not trying to fix them, he's trying to master the past. He's hoping that this time, in this act of the play, the result will be different. He's hoping that if he plays his part perfectly, the ending will change. It is a psychological loop, an internal feedback circuit that reinforces the very behavior that causes the suffering. He wants to be seen, yet he chooses people who are incapable of looking. He wants to be heard, yet he speaks in the language of his defense mechanisms. The mechanism of self-sabotage is not an accident, it is a form of protection. When Elias feels he is getting too close to a genuine success, when he is on the verge of a promotion that would require him to lead, or a relationship that would require him to be vulnerable, he hits the brakes. He might suddenly become irritable, or he might neglect a crucial task, creating a crisis that forces him to retreat. He tells himself he is tired, or he tells himself the timing is wrong. These are excuses, linguistic veils draped over a core fear of being seen in his true, unmasked state. To succeed is to change, and to change is to lose the version of oneself that felt safe, however constricted that safety may have been. The brain views the current self, with all its flaws and bottlenecks, as the only version that has survived the gauntlet of existence. To abandon that strategy, even for a better one, is to invite a terrifying sense of instability. Consider the role of the inner critic. Elias hears a voice in his head that tells him he is not enough. It is not an external voice, yet it carries the authority of a judge who can never be questioned. This voice is the enforcer of the status quo. It keeps the boundaries of his world tight. If he considers a bold move, the critic reminds him of past failures, weaving a tapestry of doubt that is so convincing he mistakes it for reality. The critic is a master of the invisible pattern. It knows exactly which buttons to press to send Elias scurrying back to his comfort zone. It uses the language of logic to sustain the illusion of safety. It tells him that he is being practical, that he is being reasonable, that he is protecting himself from disappointment. But in reality, it is shielding him from the responsibility of growth. We have to look at the way our memories are curated. We do not remember the past as it was. We remember it as a series of lessons that reinforce our current beliefs. Elias remembers the times he was ignored, but he glosses over the times he was supported. He filters his reality to fit the narrative of his own insufficiency. This is a cognitive bias that acts as a gatekeeper. By focusing only on the data that supports his patterns, he creates a closed loop where he is perpetually validated in his own unhappiness. It is a tragedy of perception. If he were to look at the data of his life with the objectivity of a scientist, he would see a different story. He would see moments of strength he has discarded, opportunities for connection he has sabotaged, and a capacity for change that he has stifled. The resistance to change is physical as well as psychological. When you decide to shift a pattern, you are essentially trying to rewire the neural highways that have been paved over decades of repetition. Think of it as walking through a dense, overgrown forest. The path you have always taken is wide, smooth, and easy to follow. When you decide to walk a new way, the underbrush is thick, the ground is uneven, and you have to fight for every step. Your brain desperately wants to drag you back to the wide, smooth path. It will send signals of fatigue, of boredom, of doubt. It will whisper that the new path is a mistake, that you are lost, that you should just turn back to where it is familiar. This is the moment of choice. This is where the script is either rewritten or repeated. Elias stands at that fork in the road again. He feels the pull of the old path, the comfort of the familiar ache. He knows the geography of his pain so well that he has stopped feeling the sting of it. It has become a background radiation, a steady, low-level hum that feels like home. If he leaves it, he will have to encounter the silence of the unknown. He will have to confront the parts of himself that he has spent a lifetime avoiding. He will have to sit with the discomfort of realizing that he, and only he, holds the key to the cage. This is the ultimate confrontation with the self. It is not about fighting demons, for the demons are just fragments of his own history, manifestations of his own resistance to the light. It is about integration. It is about acknowledging that while the patterns were once necessary for survival, they are now the very things holding him back from living. The process of deconstructing these patterns is not a sudden epiphany. It is a slow, grinding process of awareness. It begins with the simple act of noticing. Elias needs to become the observer of his own life. He needs to catch himself in the act of reaching for the familiar, to pause, and to ask a single piercing question. Is this what I truly want? Or is this simply what I have always done? This question is a blade that cuts through the narrative. When he feels the urge to retreat, to hide, to sabotage, he must learn to sit in that space of discomfort without acting on it. He must learn to breathe through the anxiety of the new. He must learn that the feeling of being lost is not the same thing as being in danger. There is a profound freedom in losing the need to be consistent with your past. You are not a static entity. You are a process, an unfolding event, a work in progress that is constantly being informed by the present moment. But to embrace this, you must be willing to let go of the identity you have built around your struggles. Elias identifies as the man who is always left behind, or the man who is never ready. If he lets go of those labels, who is he? That is the terrifying question. It is easier to be a known failure than an unknown success. It is safer to predict your own misery than to risk a future that might actually be joyful. But this is the crux of the human condition. We are caught between the desire for safety and the innate, driving need for expansion. The patterns we inhabit are not chains. They are shadows. They follow us because we are walking toward the light of our own potential, but the light is casting a shadow behind us. We spend so much energy looking at the shadow, studying its shape, fearing its size, that we forget to look at the sun that created it. The shadow is real, but it is not solid. It has no power of its own. It only takes on weight because we give it our attention. When Elias decides to stop looking back, when he decides to walk forward despite the resistance, the shadow changes shape. It begins to fade. It loses its ability to dictate his movements. He is still the same man, he still carries the same history, but he is no longer owned by it. He has reclaimed the pen, and he is beginning, tentatively, to write a different version of the scene. This is the hidden truth that most people fear. You are responsible for the patterns that rule you. You are the one who continues to play the same role in the same drama because it feels like you. But the self is a fluid thing. It adapts, it changes, it grows. If you find yourself in the same cycle of self-sabotage, it is because you have become addicted to the emotional payoff of your own struggle. You have become attached to the narrative of the victim or the narrative of the person who just cannot catch a break. These are seductive roles because they absolve you of the need to take the next harder step. They provide a reason for the lack of movement. They allow you to stay exactly where you are, safe in your misery, while longing for a change that you are simultaneously resisting. The transition from observer to actor is the most difficult stage of the journey. You have to be willing to be wrong about yourself. You have to be willing to accept that the beliefs you held about your character, your worth, and your capacity for change were perhaps nothing more than echoes of a time that no longer exists. Elias begins to see the pattern as he is about to trigger it. He feels the physical tightening in his chest, the familiar surge of adrenaline that precedes his retreat. Instead of acting, he pauses. He sits in the cafe, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee, letting the urge to flee pass through him like a wave. He does not fight it. He does not rationalize it. He simply lets it be. He realizes that the urge is not a command. It is just a sensation. And in that realization, the grip of the pattern begins to loosen. He starts to communicate differently. He stops waiting for people to hurt him, so he stops acting in ways that invite them to do so. He stops assuming he knows how the story ends, so he allows for the possibility of surprise. He begins to take small, incremental risks. He speaks up in a meeting, not because he is confident, but because he is curious about what will happen if he does. He reaches out to someone without the armor of his past defenses, and he finds that the world does not collapse. It is a slow, quiet transformation. It is not the dramatic shift of a movie climax, but the steady, invisible erosion of a mountain. It is the work of a lifetime, and yet it is the only work that matters. As you reflect on your own life, look for the patterns you have been living. What are the scripts you find yourself reading from? What are the roles you play that keep you stuck? You are not a victim of your conditioning. You are the architect of your own liberation. The moment you realize that the pattern is not your identity is the moment you start to break free. It requires a radical, uncompromising honesty. It requires you to look at your life, not with judgment, but with the curiosity of someone who is finally ready to see the truth. The shadows will always be there, but they no longer have to lead the way. You can choose to walk in a different direction, toward a future that is not a repetition of the past, but an exploration of the unknown. The script is in your hands now. The question is no longer why you are stuck. The question is what you will do with the freedom that comes from knowing you finally have a choice. The journey towards self-awareness is the most challenging path you will ever walk, but the power to redefine your reality is already within you. You have the capacity to dismantle the invisible patterns that have kept you tethered to a version of yourself that no longer serves your growth. Every time you consciously choose to interrupt the cycle, you are rewriting the neural architecture of your life. Do not wait for the perfect moment or for the feeling of certainty, because certainty is the enemy of change. Begin with the small, uncomfortable, and necessary steps. Start by observing your reactions, questioning your motives, and daring to act outside the lines you have drawn for yourself. If this exploration of the mind and the mechanics of human behavior resonated with you, subscribe to Invisible Patterns and share this with someone who is ready to turn the page. You are not destined to repeat the past unless you choose to remain the same person who lived it. The architecture of your life is yours to redesign, one choice at a time. The patterns are no longer invisible to you. The power to change them is now in your hands. It is time to walk into the light of your own potential.